it's part of who I am. I want to give back. And because I've been given these skills and I've got to use them to the best advantage. But I'm enjoying what I'm doing.
This is Down to Earth Conversations, where we hear from ordinary people who are helping to bring a bit of heaven down to earth. Kia ora i te Down to Earth Conversations whānau. Welcome back to the podcast for 2023. Or if you're new here, nau mai, haere mai, you are very welcome. I've been pretty quiet on the socials over summer, but a fair bit has been going on in the background, and I'm excited to bring you more conversations this year of ordinary people who are making a difference in life. And speaking of making a difference, thank you so much to everyone who has contributed to the fundraisers that I've had running over the summer. First for Charlotte Cummings, who took over the podcast back on episode 42. Charlotte did an amazing job last year of leading the review for Arise Church, but she ended up hugely out of pocket due to the associated legal fees. But so many of us rallied around and we were able to get the over $22,000 of shortfall paid off for her in under 24 hours. Which is just brilliant. So thank you if you contributed to that or shared that or supported that in any way. The second fundraiser is for episode 15 and 16 guest Manny Cox. And he and his wife desperately need a vehicle that can take him and his power chair around. They had a small grant 4 years ago to get a van, and it was enough to get an older model van that suited. But last year it broke down several times, costing them over $4,000. And now it's broken down and is going to cost more than the worth of the vehicle to repair, with no guarantee that it's going to be totally fixed after that. To get something that actually allows Manny to get around like anyone else with his wheelchair, they're looking at close to $60,000. So they're looking for funding where they can, but I've been running a Give a Little page for them, and so far we're up to nearly $27,000, which is so good. Yet we still have a long way to go to get them into that vehicle that they need. So I'll put a page link in the show notes. Please share the page around, and if you would like to contribute to help Manny and Sarah, then thank you so much in advance for your support. And thank you to those who have already contributed. It means so much to me and especially to Manny and Sarah. Today I'm excited to bring you my conversation with Corinne Haines, the current Christchurch City Missioner, which is the CEO of the City Mission. Corinne is a successful business leader, a wife and mother, a companion of the New Zealand Order of Merit, a generous and caring person, and it was a privilege to speak to her. We talk about her journey into business and then leading in business, particularly through adversities such as the Christchurch Earthquakes and then an office fire that came soon after that. We talk about how her journey has taken her to the Ministry of Defence and to helping with the regeneration of Christchurch. And then we discuss her current role as City Missioner, what that entails and what she's learned along the way. This is episode 65 of Down to Earth Conversations. Here's Corinne Haines. Well, it's my pleasure to be here with Corinne Haines. Kia ora, Corinne. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
For those who don't know you, why don't we start just with telling us a little bit about who you are?
Well, as Andy said, my name is Corinne, and I'm currently working for the Christchurch City Mission. This is not a job that I would ever have put my hand up for. I would never have thought that I could do this role. But I retired after 43 years with Trimble in January of this year. And in March of this year, I was tapped on the shoulder and said, would you like to fill in for a period of 6 to 8 weeks? And I thought, that's great. That gives me something to do. That gets me out of the house. It's winter. This will be a good way of filling in the next 6 to 8 weeks. And then I can worry about spring cleaning and tidying and all the things I was going
January
to do.
of last year?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
January,
yeah, cool.
January 22. I'm a year out. And so I said yes. And so after about 4 weeks, they said the person that they were actually going to give the role to was not probably as suitable as they'd thought. So would I like to continue on for a bit longer? And I thought, yep, I'm really enjoying this.
Yeah.
And actually I had been thinking, oh, I'm only here for 6 to 8 weeks. There's so many things I could do.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, I'll commit until the end of the year. That was the end of 2023. And yes, that's where we're working towards. But maybe I may stay a bit longer yet. It'll be just up to them and me, how they think things are going. I've got lots more things I want to do there. I can see potential.
Yeah, cool.
And so I'd quite like to continue.
Yeah, nice. And there is only so much you can do in a 6 to 8 week stint, isn't there? Like it's a very caretakery kind of...
Well, that's what it was. And at that stage, it was 50% hours.
Yeah.
And I was just there really to mentor, to just bounce ideas off, just to help people make decisions.
Yeah.
But then when it turned into a more permanent role, we upped it to 75% hours.
Yeah, okay, cool.
And it's really a full-time job.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm probably working full-time. But I wanted some flexibility in my life because I've got other roles that I'm doing. I'm chair of a tākaro, and that's quite a commitment. So I just didn't want to be pressured to have to do a lot of stuff after hours.
Yeah.
So I can be flexible. I can work every day a certain number of hours, or I can work 4 days of greater hours. I'm allowed to plan my week, which is really quite suitable for the sort of stage I'm at.
Yeah, that's great. And yeah, definitely want to talk about more of that as we get through the interview. But to start with, let's head back in time to your growing up. Whereabouts were you? And what was life like growing up?
Well, you could probably say I haven't moved far.
Yeah.
Because as a child, we lived in Whanganui Road, which is just up there opposite Clyde Road. I went to Whanganui Primary School, and I went to Mackenzie Kindergarten, and I went to Kirkwood Intermediate and Christchurch Girls High. And I've sort of lived in a pin around that area for the whole of my life. And I've got no complaints about that. It's a nice place to live. And I've got friends, and I had socialisation activities in that area. So I was born into a family of 3 girls. My father had come back from the war, and my mother had trained to be a school teacher, but she didn't find that all that exciting. She found the boys a little bit difficult, having come from an all-girls family. So she then became the principal secretary at Whanganui Primary School. And then I was born, I was the oldest, got 2 sisters that came in over a space of 4 years. My mother always had a regret that she didn't go to university because her father didn't think that girls needed to be educated. And then when she finished high school, the men were coming back from the war. And actually she stayed at school for another year so that she could get into teachers' college. Right. And then she did that. So she was a stay-at-home mother. She felt that that was what she needed to do. Dad was the breadwinner. We didn't have a huge amount of money, but we had a really good upbringing, and we were given lots of opportunities. And my mother said, right, she wants her girls to go to university. And so I decided to, after a lot of deliberation as to what I could do, I decided to do a commerce degree. Yeah, right. And did that at Canterbury University.
Yeah. And, I mean, you say your mother kind of was dissuaded from study.
Yes.
Was it still kind of the attitude around the time that you went in to do it?
Oh, no, I don't think so. But a lot of the girls in our class either went nursing or to teachers' college. Yeah. But a number of the ones from my class went to university because I was in one of the higher level classes. Yeah. Others probably weren't so much. Yeah. But I mean, when I started at university, the class for commerce, which was then a male-dominated study. There were 4 girls and 250 males in the class. So it was quite a shock to me, coming from an all-girls school and an all-girls family.
Yeah,
but
true.
That was fine. I never felt too bad about that.
Yeah.
And, quite a few of my friends went to university, but of course they didn't do commerce, and the university was split over 2 sites. And so they were mainly at the town site, whereas I was split between the town site and the Ilam site. So I used to travel between the 2.
Sure.
So I sort of lost contact with those friends a little bit over that time because our paths didn't cross.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was it like being such a minority? Like, was it something that you thought about at all, or did you just get on with it?
Well, there were 4 girls, and we sat in the back row together.
Yeah.
As you do.
Yeah.
I mean, over the years, I've probably been a minority right through my career. And personally, I just kept thinking, right person in the right place at the right time. Yeah. If I'm the right person and if I've got the skills, then I'll be okay. And I've never really, story of my life, I never really planned anything too much and have been tapped on the shoulder for every single thing that I've done. Yeah, so I've not had to make a conscious decision as to what I want to do in life. Somebody said, hey, I think you could do this, or would you like to do that? And so I feel that those opportunities have come because I am the right person, and that gender didn't really come into it. And at Trimble, probably 80% of the staff were males. All of the senior leadership team, apart from myself and perhaps the HR person, were males. But I don't think anybody ever thought, oh, this is a female running this company. They just felt that was my role and I was doing okay, and they respected me for it. Yeah, cool. So I've never felt a trailblazer or in the wrong place. I just felt this is the job, this is what I've been called to, this is what I'm doing. I'll do the best I can, and it seems to have worked out for me. Yeah,
that's interesting because in my head, I kind of have women who are going into those male-dominated areas being the pioneers and but actually, even the fact that you were in those roles would have been inspirational to some younger women coming through.
I would hope so.
But interesting to hear that wasn't kind of part of the parcel for you.
No, not at all. I'm not that sort of person. I just want to do a good job, the best I can in the role that I'm doing. And I don't think, help, I'm a female. Although sometimes it's been a little bit confronting when you go into a room and there's all these males and you sort of somewhat have to break into a conversation where you are a little different. Yeah. But over the years, you get to know those people, they get to respect you, and you get brought into those conversations. So perhaps it was a little bit more difficult than it would have been for a male, but I didn't really feel like I was a trailblazer. I just felt this is the job, this is what I'm doing. Hopefully I'm good at it, and I'll just keep doing it.
Looking at your history, you clearly were good at it because you kept getting the opportunities. And so you went on not only to work in business, but to lead in business.
Yes.
So what was that journey like? How did you get into that leadership kind of space?
Well, it's been a sort of quite a long, convoluted career, because when I left university, I went to what was called Pickles Perkinson Hadley, turned into KPMG. And when I was there, I was doing the accounts, along with a lot of other sets of accounts, for Computer Bureau Limited, which was a real trailblazer in the computing industry. It was one of the first companies that offered computing services to organisations. So they did it for Fletcher's, for New Zealand Motor Corporation, who made British Leyland cars, for New Zealand Cooperative Dairy Company, and then in Christchurch, quite a few smaller entities. And I was employed to be the finance manager for New Zealand, and that was at age 27, which I felt pretty proud about. Yeah. Well, at least I didn't probably think about it too much at that time, but looking back on it, that was a big leap in faith for those people. Yeah. However, I had been doing the accounts at KPMG. Yeah. And then I did that. Then they moved the head office to Auckland. They asked me if I'd like to do sort of consulting work and look after the super fund and things. Children were born. And then they had this little entity called Datacom Software Research, or they changed their name to Datacom, which is the Datacom that everybody knows now. Right. And they had this little company called Datacom Software Research, which was an innovative arm doing data collection for the surveying industry. And so I was asked if I would like to come back and do the accounting for that entity within the Datacom group. So I sort of moved into that, and through... after I joined there, about 3 years later, then that was bought by Trimble, which was a US corporation, who were doing GPS, and we were doing mainly optical surveying. And we had been looking around to align ourselves with somebody who was doing GPS. And Datacom said they thought we should align ourselves with a bigger player. So, yes.
Cool. What sort of years are we talking about?
About 1991.
Yeah, right.
So in 1991, we had 41 people in Datacom Software Research. And that was the company that they bought. And there was a managing director at that time, but down the track, he got offered a job for the parent company in Colorado. And I'd been really looking after a lot of that general management stuff underneath him. And so it was just general move to
Yeah.
take over that role. And I kept that role until I finished. But I also kept some more day-to-day accounting activities because I looked after finance for Asia Pacific as well as the managing director role.
Yes, a whole bunch of different Trimble's offices around the world.
Yeah, Australia, Singapore, Thailand, Chile, New Zealand.
Wow.
Yeah, so lots of opportunities there to do different things.
Yeah.
And travel. I also set up the accounting for their Shanghai office as well, but then that got too hard to manage offshore, so they took that over, thankfully.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were talking before we started recording about how even doing this interview is not really your favourite thing because you like to be a leader who's kind of more in the background.
Yep.
What would you say, because often people think of leaders as the out there, the face of the thing, you know, all of that kind of stuff. What would you say were your attributes that allowed you to be a successful leader?
Yeah, well, that's quite. You should ask somebody else that question.
Totally. Yeah, I
think
ask
I'm quite.
you to talk about yourself.
I'm quite calm. I'm quite collaborative.
Yeah.
I think I'm transparent. I listen. I take on board what people say, and then I balance all that up and try to say to myself, how do we make this work? How do we give people the authority to do what they want to do without telling them what to do? So hopefully talking it through with them. I mean, every now and then you have to step in and say, well, this is what I think. But I'm perhaps more transparent than some people, and I do like to involve people quite a lot. I also don't mind doing the details. So, and that's probably not such a good manager in a way, but I still could keep my hand in. I could still do the work that they were doing, so that if they were away, I could fill in.
Yep.
If they had questions, I somewhat knew the answers, or between us we could work out the answers. So I wasn't a manager who was just managing and didn't want to be involved in the lower level stuff.
Which would make you not distant from them, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I could sit down and show them how to do sort of journal entries, how to do some transactions. We could bounce ideas, what's the best way to do this. I tried to keep up to date with the accounting standards and dealing with the auditors and things like that, so that they could rely on me to support them in their roles.
You said that when Trimble took over, there was about 40 staff, but
Yes.
it grew from there?
Yes, well, in the end, we had probably 450 in New Zealand by the time I finished.
Right.
And
you were overseeing all of that?
yes, although it's a little bit of a matrixed organisation. So although it said managing director, not many people actually reported up to me,
Right.
because they would report to people offshore somewhere in the world.
Sure.
If they were doing development on this project, they might have gone into Germany, and these ones might have gone into Sweden, these ones into America. But I had to make sure that we followed New Zealand law, that they had the leases were all done, that the culture was right. Making sure that we were a cohesive organisation within that matrixed organisation. So we made 3 acquisitions while I was in charge. We bought a forestry company, we bought a weighing solution company, and a very digital one in the building space.
Right.
And so that gave us a breadth of opportunity that we didn't have before.
Yeah.
But the whole of Trimble is really R&D, research and development, for the parent company. All the sales were done through dealers and distributors, managed by the US head company.
Yeah, okay.
And so we were just developing products for the parent company. So, yes, so we grew up to 450. We had about 300 and something in Christchurch, and probably had about 60 in Auckland, and then we had Whangarei, Gisborne, Tokerua, Rotorua and Wellington.
Wow.
And we had pockets of people in those ones as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess because the largest group was in Christchurch,
Yeah.
then it was quite a big deal when the earthquakes came.
Quite a big deal.
Because, I mean, lots
Yeah.
of people who are in your sort of roles elsewhere in the country or the world wouldn't have had to deal with anything like that. So what was that like for you?
Well, it was the September one was very early in the morning. So on the Saturday morning, I thought, well, I better go and see what's happened to the office. And I went down there, and there was quite a lot of damage upstairs. And I thought, I'm not sure about this, so I quickly ran away again because they were still having aftershocks and I wasn't so sure what I was going to do. But then that calmed down and we managed to keep working in that office through to the February earthquake. The major damage was done in the February earthquake.
Yeah, right.
I was going into a board meeting in town, so I wasn't actually in the office that day. It happened at about 2:30 in the afternoon, and I was at home. But when I went there, I mean, the ceiling grid was all down, the air conditioning units were hanging down, the lighting was hanging down. I don't know how people didn't get damaged, but they were under their desks. We'd had plenty of practice. They came out of the building, and it was a mess. And we didn't own the building, but we had that particular building, which was joined to another building on site by a covered walkway at the top level. And so we put people in there. We really squashed ourselves up. We used the ground floor, but not the top floor.
Yeah.
And we had a sort of a single-storey annex out to one side, so we put all the stuff we didn't need down there, and we just worked downstairs. Well, then in May, the crisis was way worse because that building burnt down in a fire.
Oh, wow.
So the whole building...
In that same year?
Yes.
Oh, my
The
Lord.
18th of May, I think, of that year,
Wow.
2011. So the earthquake was February,
Yeah.
and the fire was May. And the landlord had done all this work to get it ready for us to move back into. And we were 2 weeks away from moving back in. He put down new carpet, new ceiling gridding, painted it, tidied it all up, made it really nice. And then 2 weeks before we moved in, the whole thing burnt down. That was probably more of a problem for me than the earthquakes, because in the earthquakes we could use the ground floor. We had the second building. We had that building which had 100 people in it. So for the first, that was at 12:30 a.m, stood on the side of the road till 5 o'clock at night while the fireman was still working on the fire. And we were just thinking, and I came in the next morning and I stood in that same spot and thought, well, I can hardly run a business from standing on the footpath. I'll have to figure out what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And then I had to think, how are we going to make this work? I had a really good IT manager. He was already getting data downloaded because the Asian sites were all hanging off our computer system as well. So they had no phones,
wow.
they had no email. So we got them up and running within 24 hours.
Yep.
We got our staff up and running within about 2 to 3 days. But of course we lost a lot of computing resource, computers and all that sort of stuff. And then we got the whole of the data, that's how much we had, downloaded 24/7 over the space of 2 weeks. And then we're ready.
That's a lot of data.
It was. Ready to run off a co-location centre.
Yeah.
But we're really lucky because that server room had a 4-hour fire rating. So it was, the racks were melting, but there was no fire inside and no water. And then we weren't allowed in the building, but we could tell the firemen how to get the drives out of the racks. We had a good backup system, but of course it was only backed up till a particular time. And so they actually pulled the drives out of the server room for us, and we took them down to the co-location centre. And luckily they were compatible with their machinery and they could download the stuff. So that was a huge thing because the earthquakes had happened. Everybody had moved out into the suburbs. There was no accommodation for people in the suburbs. Yeah. And I've got 100 people with nowhere to work. So we worked at the Horncastle Arena in the corporate boxes, and we had a few people working every one of those corporate boxes. Every time they had an event, we had to pack everything up for the night, and then we had to bring it all out the next morning. I said, this is clearly not going to be very helpful. So we built some portacoms on the car park. We squashed more people in the other piece of the building. And then we took a lease out at Sheffield Crescent, which was not ideal because it was miles away. Yeah. But we luckily had that until we built a new building. And then we had, the landlord said he would build us a new building, and he'd built it 1.5 times the size, so we didn't need the second building. And we could all move into the new building, and he took that lease back.
Wow.
But we had to design the building. And I had to project manage that whole thing over the
Right.
space.
So that's awesome, but also a whole lot more work.
Yes, on top of everything
On
else that
top
we had
of
to do
everything.
when we don't have all the resources that we want, and we lost a lot of paperwork in the fire.
I bet
and
there
all
was a
of
whole
that.
lot of insurance company stuff in there too.
Yeah, well, there was 4 years of insurance claims, which just
Oh,
about drove me nuts
jeez.
because, they wanted to compare what did you have, what did you lose with what did you buy, and what one ties up with what one. And
Yeah.
it was quite. I'd never go through it again. I said, if we ever have another fire, I'm off. This is too hard. But I learned a lot in that time.
Yeah.
Communication is the key. So some of my staff would come and work at my place during the day. I left my machine at home and they bought their own machines. They sat around the dining room table. And then I'd come home at night and use my equipment at night. And then before I went to bed each night, I would write to them and give them a wee bit of an update of what we'd done during the day or where we were going or what the issues were. Trying to motivate them, trying to make them think that I'm busy doing something for them. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
So that was a challenging time.
Yeah, I can only
we
imagine.
did get a part-time person to help us with the claim, but the rest of it I just seemed to somehow squash into my day.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
But anyway, it was, on one level it was challenging, on one level it was fun. We were getting a new building. I learned a lot. I learned a heap. Things I'd never have learnt any other way.
Yeah.
So, and I just kept thinking this is a learning experience. But it was quite stressful.
That's one of the things that podcast listeners will have heard me bang on about is find the good. And that's been one of my mottos is even when life really sucks, you can still find the good somewhere. At some stage, you've become involved in like a government group looking at the future of the Ministry of Defence. And as you mentioned before, you chair the board of Otakaro, which is the government company that oversees much of the rebuild in Christchurch. At what point did you start thinking, managing this large company is just not busy enough. I need to add more stuff to my life.
No, I never thought that. No, I never thought that. In fact...
How did those come about?
I think when I got the Champion Canterbury Award from the Chamber of Commerce for business in Christchurch, and I came a little bit more visible. I actually think it was Jerry Brownlee who asked if I would join the Ministry of Defence white paper. He wanted somebody from outside Wellington, someone outside government, somebody who didn't know much about defence, and somebody who'd been running a business corporation, to have a different viewpoint than the other people on that panel. And I said, I don't think that's me. I mean, I'm not really interested in defence because I wasn't at that stage. But I do know somebody who'd be really suitable. No, we don't want anybody else. We want you. So I'm thinking, okay, well, this might be a bit of a challenge. So then I talked to the company, and they said, if you want to do that, we'll allow you. It was something like about 1 day off a fortnight. I'm travelling to Wellington, but I still sort of had to do my job, which was fine. I was willing to do that. So I didn't go seeking anything extra to do. It fell in my lap. And it was a 1-year project, and it was a good year. It was a tough assignment when you know nothing about defence, but the others did. I mean, Wayne Mapp, who'd been an ex-Minister of Defence, was there, and David Ledson, who was Chief of Navy, was on it as well. So they had plenty of knowledge about it. So, we could bounce ideas off. And
did you feel in the end with it that you did have things to offer?
I felt I probably could have offered more when we got onto more the human resource side or the facilities side, but we spent quite a lot of time at the beginning talking about capability and about planes and frigates and all that sort of stuff, which I did find a little bit difficult at that time, but I could add some value through that process. But I probably would have been more valuable if we'd been talking about some of those other things. But I think it was worthwhile for them to have somebody different on there, gave a different perspective. And it was a fine art thing, and so it was really probably a year, just over a year.
And so did the Otakaro thing come after that?
Pretty much after that. I mean, they just rang me up and said, would you like to go on this board? And I said, no, I'm really too busy. I just don't have time to do something like that. And they said, when would you be? So I didn't have a finance person or an HR person, or I was just training somebody, or they'd left or something. And they said, when do you think that you would be? And I said, oh, well, and this was about April. I said, well, maybe about July. Maybe I might be a little bit freer than I am now because they will be installed in what they're doing. So I thought they'll never come back to me. But in July, they didn't come back and ask the question that time. They came back with the paperwork ready to be signed.
Right.
So I thought, we don't get offered these opportunities every day of the week. So again, I asked the parent company, would that be okay and would that be a conflict of interest? And no, they said that would be fine. So I said yes. So I was just a member of the board at that stage. So it was about 6 months into the life of that entity, and probably was a good time for me to come in because earlier on, setting it up, they were quite busy and were doing lots more than it turned out to be later on as it got a bit more stable. So I came in probably at the right time for me anyway, from a work perspective. But I did miss out on all that setting up. So I felt at the beginning, I kept saying, this might sound a silly question, but, and then they'd fill me in on the details because I didn't have that history. But that was right.
I mean,
everybody coming new.
That feels like
problem.
my experience of coming on a school board.
Right.
Of trying to figure out what the heck all the acronyms are.
Yeah.
I spent half of the meetings early on figuring out what the heck we're talking about.
At the mission, we have a one-page glossary of acronyms.
Yeah.
So you
I think the education one's like 3 or 4 pages.
Oh, is it? Yeah.
There's just that everywhere.
Oh, Trimble had that problem too.
I guess
organisations do
totally.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. So Otakaro, what is the kind of main gist of your involvement as the chair of the board there? Like how much sort of time does that take, and in what ways are you involved?
It varies from time to time, but as chair of the board, I meet with the CEO once a week. So I have a meeting with him every week, and he will tell me what he's been working on. He'll bounce ideas off me. He'll talk about things like maybe salaries, or we're having this discussion with one of the construction companies. This is what we're thinking. What do you think about that? Or issues within the staff, or expansion, or reorganisation, all sorts of different things. Just bouncing ideas off me, just to sort of clarify what my thoughts were. So I do that every week. 3 weeks a month, it's Monday. And then the week before the board meeting, I go on a Thursday because the board papers are out. And so we go through the agenda for the board meeting, look at what the topics are. I ask him for comments. I try to skim through the papers by that stage. And then we talk about any issues that might come up, anything he wants my support or backing on. We'll discuss it through. And then we will have a board meeting at least once a month, where it's basically 2/3 of a day, I guess.
Yeah.
And so I go to that, and then we have audit and risk. We have that 4 times a year. And I'm not on the audit and risk committee, but I do go to the meetings because I feel like I need to know what those risks are, even though I'm not on the committee. Somebody else chairs those. We have a strategic planning day. Treasury want to discuss things. We've got a meeting with Treasury next week. We have meetings with the shareholding ministers. So there's bits and pieces popping up all the time, but the major commitments is the board meeting, the audit and risk meeting, and meeting the CEO on a regular basis. And then they have Thursday stand-up, so every now and then I'll go to a Thursday stand-up if there's something that I need to share with them. Yeah. Or they might have a little sort of competition, and I judge the competition. Nice. Just to get to know the staff on a casual basis.
Oh, that's cool. Has it been quite rewarding being part of something that's all about regeneration? And
you feel like you're leaving a legacy for Christchurch.
Awesome.
And that's one of the reasons why I thought it would be good to do. I mean, I've lived here since I was born. We haven't got any grandchildren, and we probably won't have any grandchildren, but you're leaving a legacy for people's grandchildren, and making the city a nice place to be, a place of choice for people to live. And we've done some things that you don't really see. They're probably a bit mundane, like repairing all the streets. 90% of that's under the street, and you don't see much for your efforts. But we've reworked all of those main streets. We did the the boulevard from the boat sheds right through to Fitzgerald Ave and reworked all that. We've done the south frame, made that into laneways and greenery spaces, and we're working on the east frame, which is all of the housing through with Fletcher's and some other providers now on building apartments and high-rise buildings for people to live in the city. We reworked Victoria Square, we did the Earthquake Memorial, then we did Tapai, the convention centre, which was a pretty big project.
It's amazing.
Yeah, have you been in there?
No, I haven't been in yet, but I've heard amazing things about it. But even just standing outside it, it's just such a landmark.
Oh, it is.
It's going to...
The design is amazing, and you go inside and there's not single square wall. It's all curved. It's all following the contour of the building. It's all about the braided rivers. The whole design flows through the whole building.
That's something I've loved about the Regeneration, is that there's been so much thought put into telling the stories of Christchurch and matching the landscape and, all of that kind of stuff that's going to, in 50 years or so, we're going to look back and go, oh, I'm so glad that they put that time and effort into
Sure.
that.
Yeah, well, there's quite a bit of artwork around the convention centre, and we did take a lot of advice from Matapoupuri and the Maori influence, and I mean they gifted us the name. I mean we've tried to work in with that, and the light wall hanging was all designed from that perspective as well. So that was really great, and then we're working on Parakiori, the Metro Sports facility, which is a little bit slower than we would like, but that's going to be a great facility as well. So we've done some pretty challenging and pretty exciting things, and that is probably the last Regeneration in Christchurch activity. But now that we're being repurposed, we will get a new name, and we're going to do infrastructure delivery for the government for the whole of New Zealand. Well, when I say the whole of New Zealand, those infrastructure projects could be anywhere in New Zealand.
Oh, right.
Cool. for multiple government departments. At the moment, we were working for the Minister of Regeneration, but we might work for Justice, and we might work for MIMBI, and we might work for many other ministry departments.
There might need to be a bit of regeneration happening after all the
exactly,
flooding
in Auckland and Hawke's
Bay.
Bay. Yeah. So we did horizontal and we do vertical. And we've got now an office in Auckland and we're starting an office in Wellington. So we will now be a national company as well.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That's exciting.
It is exciting.
Yeah.
And we were given that opportunity because they felt we'd done a reasonable job on the Christchurch rework. And so we've proven that we can get a project, we can see it to completion and deliver.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Cool. And then, as we talked about right at the start, you retired.
Yes.
And then became one of the busiest retired people I've ever met. You are this Christchurch City Missioner. Can you just tell us a little bit about what that involves and what is the City Mission, for those who don't know?
Yes, I think a lot of people would say City Mission, emergency accommodation and food parcels, because it's been around for 90 years. And that's what it started doing, and that's what it's still doing. But we actually do a lot more than that. And when I talk to groups, they come away and say, wow, we didn't know you did that much stuff. So we do emergency accommodation for men and women. So if people turn up at 5 o'clock at night and they need a bed, we don't turn them away if we've got a bed. And so if they've got a bed, they can stay a night. They can stay 2 nights. They might stay 3 or 4 nights. But if they stay more than a couple of nights, we will work with them. We'll say, do you need a social worker? Do you need a counselling? Have you got drug and alcohol problems? Have you got, we try to drill down. Is it a short-term need? Is it a long-term need? What's caused it? And so we try to sort of support them in that situation. So we've got those 2 emergency accommodations. We've just opened a transitional housing facility, which is a 15-bed unit, 3 floors of 5 bedrooms. And it's like a flatting situation. They have to do their own cooking, their own housework. They have to look after their own bedroom. But they have to socialise together. They're not to sort of sit in their rooms. They have to sit together. They have to work out how to live together. They have to work out how to roster cooking. And they have 1 night a week where they have to cook.
So learning a whole lot of life skills.
Yeah, so that when they go back into the community, they'll be better able to cope. And so when they come into that, it's sort of a 3-month. We've just started it. It'll be a 3-month there, and they get what's called a navigator, and that person will be with them for the 3 months. Then we'll go back out into the community with them for a few months to just make sure they're still doing okay, that where we've put them works well for them, so that we give them every opportunity to survive out there. But while they're with us in the mornings, they have to do learning and development activities. It's part of the contract that they sign up to.
Right.
So they might learn income management, they might numeracy, literacy. We help some of them get a driver's license. We teach them cooking. We might teach them how to shop, healthy eating, all sorts of different things that they've probably not learnt about in their childhood and in their growing up years. So that's that part of housing. We've got an alcohol and drug centre, so we're the only private detox unit in the South Island. And so we take people in there for 1 to 2 weeks. They're not allowed any drugs. They're basically not really allowed out. And we intensively work with them. We've got nurses who can medicate them if they get into issues when they come off drugs, and do activities with them. And that's called Thorpe House. And we have people who are dedicated to that work. But then we also have people working in that alcohol and drug space. Like we've got a group called Wahine Waiora, and they're for females who want to come in every day for as long as they like. They do craft, they do sort of counselling, one-on-one group therapy sessions. We give them instruction, and yeah, as I say, that's during school time, so they're free to go home to their families, and they can we never sign them off. Although if they don't come for 2 or 3 weeks or 4 weeks or 5 weeks, we might somewhat think that they've moved on. But if they come back, they can come back. Yeah. And so we support them. We do have the food bank, and that is one of our biggest things, and we're just opening a building in the next 2 to 3 months which will have a proper food warehouse and a self-serve supermarket as well, to give people dignity to choose what they want. Although realistically, a lot of people will still want to just pick up a food parcel and go. But we will give them help with that. We will have volunteers who will go through the supermarket, because they'll get a certain number of points and say, sure, right, you've got 30 more points, or you've bought pasta. Do you want to buy pasta sauce? Do you want vegetables or do you want fruit? Would you like rice or do you want pasta? And somewhat guide them through and help them get a balanced sort of group of things that they could have. But they will have the chance to buy, or, but when I say buy, up to a number of points, what they will want in their parcel, rather than what we just give them. So that's a whole new proposition for us that we're going to start. So, and we've got our op shops as well. So we've got them Thrive. Yes, they're called Thrive op shops. So there's one in Chewham Street, one in Sydenham, and Brindwa and Rangiora. And that's for people to go where they can get cheap clothing, but also to earn money for the mission. So there's a double edge there. So it's, if we were really wanting to make money for the mission, then the prices would be too high. Yes. But if we get things that are really good, we put them on Trade Me. So we've got a Trade Me account, and we've got a one that we put retro and label clothing on as well. So we can get better prices for those than we would get in the op shop. And we've got the cafe now. So I don't know if you've heard about the City Mission Cafe, but it's opposite. Just briefly, yeah. Yeah, so it's a value for money cafe. So if you just want the basics, tea's $2, coffee's $3, and muffins are $3, and scones are $2. But then we have meals as well. So if you have a full breakfast, I think it's $10.50, which is still cheaper than other places. There's takeaway meals, so you can buy a ready-made meal for something around about $10, I think, and that's got meat with vegetables, and it's just ready to reheat. And it's open to anybody. It's open from 7:30 in the morning till 2:30 in the afternoon. And you'll find our clients there, because we have a pay it forward, so they might get their coffee for nothing, or they might get their coffee for nothing, but they might buy their own muffin or their own scone. And then you'll find business people having a meeting there. You'll find tradesmen coming in just for a coffee as they're going on their way to work. You'll find our staff there. Yeah. And it's such a good, vibrant village sort of atmosphere, which is what we're trying to make it. Yeah. So that's something that started at Labour Weekend last year.
Oh, that's awesome. I mean, it sounds like a very diverse and complex kind of organisation.
Oh, it is.
And when I guess if you just take face value and go, working for the City Mission, if it, that stereotype of it being food parcels and
Yep.
and accommodation, and then you're working in business for years, don't necessarily go hand in hand, but actually, looking at what you've done through your working career, your business career, actually so many of those skills would be not only helpful but extremely necessary to be able to
Absolutely.
run a business like that.
Because people would say, oh, it's not a business. And I say, well, it is. It just has a different purpose.
Yeah.
Commercial businesses are out to make money. Mm-hmm. We're out to break even. If we make a little bit of money, that's great, because all organisation needs reserves.
Yeah.
But we're here to break even. But it's a $9.6 million business. So that's what
Wow.
it costs us to run it. And we've got 100 and something employees, some full-time, some part-time, some casual. That's a lot of people to look after. So there's people, there's finances, there's strategic planning, there's all of those things that you have in a standard commercial business in this organisation. It just has a different purpose in life. And so we have to find $26,000 every day of the year to survive. Now, some of that comes from government contracts, some of it comes from grants, but a lot of it comes through our own ways of raising money. So if there was anything that kept me awake at night, which it doesn't, would be, are we going to have enough money to pay the staff? And we're doing quite well this year, so I don't have to worry about that, but it's always there for the future.
Yeah.
When I say we're doing quite well, we are on budget.
You're not raking it in.
No, we're not. No, we're not. And I could tomorrow say a different story.
Yeah.
So, you're sitting on a bit of a knife edge.
Yeah.
It's that, or the safety of our staff and our clients, because some of our clients are unpredictable. They have mental health issues. One day they can be very easy to deal with, the next day they can have major problems. So keeping the staff safe is quite a big thing for me.
Yeah.
But we do quite well in that line as well. But, there are times when we've had to shut reception and sort something out before we can have people come back in again, which you don't get so much in a commercial organisation. But it just goes with the territory.
Yeah. What has been the best thing for you about being in this role?
The passion of the staff who work there. From day one, you could see that the people who work there want to be there. They're passionate about what they do.
That's fantastic.
And they love their clients. I mean, you listen to love your neighbour as yourself. And I've said to people when I've talked in church, that's very easy when you look around this church and love your neighbour. I mean, there's nothing that you would not love about those people. But you come into the reception at the City Mission, it takes a very special person to love those people.
Yeah.
And our staff do. They love them. They really want to help them. And that passion and that enthusiasm for what they're doing. And also the fact that when we're looking for new people, we find people who want to come and work for us. And that actually somewhat amazes me, and it certainly encourages me, because for those people it's not all about the salary, it's not all about the money. It's about they want to be part of an organisation that's out there helping vulnerable people.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the exciting things that I found. And that's why I wanted to stay, because I can see that my contribution overarching what those people are doing is so valuable to the people who actually have that hands-on job.
Mm.
Well, one of the things I've missed out, not that I could tell you everything about what we do, but we do have sites out in the community. So we've got Linwood, we've got Sydenham, Beckenham and Hornby, where we have groups of people out there with community trusts and things working out there as well. Because coming to the mission in Hereford Street is confrontational for some people.
Yep.
But if they can come to one of the community hubs and the people there say, well, maybe you should see one of the counsellors at the mission. If they come with a name and say, I'm coming to see so-and-so, or I've been asked
just
to
breaks
come
the
here.
ice for them.
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
So we're trying to develop that a little bit more.
Oh, that's
to
really
make
cool.
it less confrontational for people.
And I mean, that's about looking at the fact that these are people, isn't it?
Yeah.
And going, well, actually, all of us get nervous going to new things, and all of us get nervous having to ask for help.
Yes. It's
Why don't we
quite
make it
hard
easy?
to ask for help, actually. So we had a 71-year-old who used to give to the mission quite a lot. And then he found himself in strife. He said he sat outside for 15 minutes before he plucked up courage to come in, even though he'd been there multiple times before helping. But he had to pluck up courage to come in. So it's quite...
And I guess that story also goes to the fact that, people might have in their heads what people are like who might need the support of the mission, but...
all of a sudden they find themselves like that.
Yeah, that actually, I guess, what you would have seen would be that those stereotypes
It's not all
don't
about
paint the picture.
No, they don't. I mean, there definitely are the people that you would normally think would be our clients, and we're there absolutely to help them. But then there's people who come who, for one reason or another, can't pay their bills, can't pay for food. Maybe they've lost their job, maybe the interest rates have gone up, maybe they've had they've had their house taken away from them, or whatever it is, and they need our help at this point in time. They never would have expected to be in that situation. Some of them have even got an income. It's just that they can't make ends meet.
Yeah.
And it's really hard for those people. And you might stereotype it as being a single male or something like that, but it's not. It's families, it's females, it's across the board, the sort of people who are coming to us these days.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I could talk to you for ages about all this, but we need to wrap up. But an observation, I guess the part of the reason I wanted to chat so much about the stuff that came before your work at the mission is because I look at all of that and then look at your work at the mission and go, it's not that you were doing business and now you're making a difference. Actually, you've been making a difference the whole way through.
Yeah.
And that we can use our skills in all sorts of places. And I think you're a really great example of that you've used it in business, you've used it to be on the board of Otakaro, making a huge difference in Christchurch and now beyond, and yet you've also been able to serve the mission and with that people focus. And I think for those listening, that's really cool to think about the variety of ways that we can make a difference.
Yeah, well, I have been lucky. I have been given skills. I was not hugely academic at school. I got my degree. I wouldn't say, I probably didn't get an A in that all that time, but I've used those skills that I've got to the best of my ability to support organisations or people, mentoring people, leading people, supporting people. And I've been involved in St Barnabas for years. I was in a St James before that. I've been on vestry for I don't know how many years. I like to give back to those organisations. I was on school PDAs. I ran second-hand clothing shops, all of those things. It's part of who I am. I want to give back. And because I've been given these skills and I've got to use them to best advantage. Yeah. But I'm enjoying what I'm doing.
Which is fantastic.
Yeah.
So, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us and share your story. Thank you for all the ways that you have given of yourself for the benefit of others. Thank you for what you're doing to bring a bit of heaven down to earth.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Hello, hello heaven. Will I hear you whisper to come near?
I loved hearing about Corinne's journey that has led in so many different directions because she's been open to the possibilities presented to her and to hear the variety of ways that she's used her skills to make a difference in the world. Corinne, we so appreciate you sharing with us. Here is a blessing for you. Corinne, may you continue to love what you do, and may others be encouraged as you support them to do what they love too. May surprise opportunities continue to tap you on the shoulder and draw you into experiences you may otherwise never have explored. May you continue to be encouraged that who you are makes a difference in the world, that what you do flows from that, and that many are being impacted by you living your best life. May you find moments of joy and celebration alongside the challenges and heartaches, finding the good even in the most challenging spaces. May you find rest in the busyness, refreshing you for what lies ahead, and giving you space to just be with yourself and with others who bring you life. May you continue to find friends and companions with whom you can share the journey, those who have your back no matter what, and who celebrate you just as you celebrate others. And lastly, may you know you are seen, you are heard, and you are loved. Thanks to Strawn for the music and Rangi for the karakia. Join me next time when I talk to Karen Maxwell about her journey of parenting, how she's reacted when life hasn't turned out how she'd planned, and how she and her whānau have journeyed through ups and downs of life together. Until then, me inoi tātou.
E tō mātou matua I te rangi, kia tapu tō ingoa, kia tau mai tō rangatiratanga, kia mea te tau e pai ai ki runga ki te whenua, kia rite anō ki tō te rangi. Homai kia mātou ai nei, he taro mā mātou mō tēnei rā. Muro mātou hara, me mātou hoki e muru nei I o te hunga, e hara ana kia mātou. Aua hoki mātou e kawea, kia whakawaia, engari whakaorangi a mātou I te kino.